As Robert says, we're going to have a brief dwell on information governance. We've had the national and European side of things from Peter earlier, and now to look at some of the issues and challenges from our own point of view within BRISSKit, and the sort of questions we've got and issues really we want to discuss with yourselves as to where the project is going and how some of the challenges within information governance are going to be dealt with. And I suppose the issue generally within today and the next 2 days, which applies equally to information governance, is the moving from the research project basis to creating something which is sustainable and providing assured services. So within information governance, that's one of those areas of saying, is this something that can be reliably used and taking up within live rather than as a project. Where I come to this from is having spent about a decade or so within the NHS, initially doing some slightly technical stuff within mental health, and then within mental health research, looking at psychiatric outcomes and looking into data analysis in that sort of area, and then moving in towards a health informatics service on the other side of that particular fence, and examining things such as information governance toolkits and the sort of requirements and providing the evidence within the whole trust there. And also things such as developing information asset ownership and risk management and so forth, and things such as pseudonymisation and looking at how that could be implemented within a trust. So one of the specific areas we're looking at now is how information governance toolkits should apply to BRISSKit. And initially at B there, we were looking at the acute trust standards, which there are 45 of, I think, which is a pretty heavy workload. And looking at it from the point of view as the project being taken up within and having a relationship with an acute trust, what would the sort of things they be looking for and what sort of assurance would they need to provide if they were using BRISSKit. So from that point, and of course the relationship we have, particularly with acute trust, is University Hospitals Leicester, so from this point on we're going to be working in partnership with them to look at information governance issues. The second area we're looking at is the hosted secondary user team and project set of standards, and particularly having discussions about that within the last week or two. And the definition there, the hosted secondary use team, which seems to very much apply to what we're doing here, is individuals, teams and projects processing NHS patient information for purposes of non-direct care, such as clinical research activity. And it talks about discrete subunits or divisions of host organisations. So in our case, the project being part of the University of Leicester. And so the requirement set enables the individuals and the teams to assess the adequacy of IG processes around their projects. You don't know whether you'll be able to see that in detail, but they're the set of standards. So rather than the 45 for an acute trust, there's 14 in this set of standards. So we're looking at there within information governance management, for example, of creating an information governance policy and assigning specific roles and responsibilities within the project. And moving through to things such as the physical security and incident management and reporting procedures and so forth. So they're the sort of areas that we're now looking at to say whether we think this is the right set of standards for us and for the project, and to apply these. An interesting thing, sadly I was looking at this at the weekend and looking at what I could find, and what I could find was 31 different organisations registered against this set of standards. And only 12 by March 2012, only 12 of those had actually provided evidence in the 2011-12 year. So there aren't a lot of organisations as yet reporting against this set of standards but I think that will be increasing. So beyond the Information Governance Toolkit, just to very briefly go through, look at some of the areas that we're dealing with. We'd be picking up, for example, the IGE training tool, which is something I had a particular experience of when I was in the NHS. So getting the people involved in the project, taking the relevant standards there, taking the relevant modules there, which are then part of the IGT standards. Also looking at areas such as pseudonymisation, of course, and anonymisation, and technically dealing with those issues, which was shown, we were looking at earlier within the Civi CRM and creating the anonymous ID. And also data management planning. We have created a data management plan for the project using the DCC DMP Online, and that's something we want to develop further. And also looking at IT security and standards, so that's something we're scheduling in penetration testing and security testing of the technology itself. And other sort of standards and requirements that are sort of in mind of things we need to be aware of, and some of those were mentioned earlier, such as the Care Records Guarantee, NHS Constitution, records management requirements, and patient safety, DSCNs, the data standard change notice, 2009. Those ones I had particular experience of in the past in the NHS of going through some quite interesting training about IT security and the sort of, and it raises issues of what systems such as BRISSKit could potentially do, the sort of problems you could have with those if the technology isn't tight enough. And a final area, just briefly to touch upon, is within security management and ISO 27001, 27002, which people such as Tito in the room here will be able to tell you an awful lot more about, having gone through the detailed and laborious accreditation process. So that's another area we are looking at now. Whether or not we'll be accredited is an open question, but look at the demands there within, for example, creating information security management systems and implementing information security policies and so forth. So these are the sort of things that are on the agenda now within the project, and we're looking to talk to the pilots, collaborators, and get advice as to the best way to progress in those areas. That is a very brief whistle-stop tour of information governance.